Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and today I'm joined by a whole bunch of people. We're going to go through this one at a time. We have with me...
Hi, I'm Professor Meg.
We have Mark and Tom.
I'm Tom.
Both of these two from Oneb, if you're not familiar. Oneb being short for Orange Nebula. Do you guys officially... Question number one. Do you officially go by Oneb, or is it Orange Nebula?
Orange Nebula is the legal name. People know us as Oneb.
Mm-hmm.
So Oneb is the thing. It's not just me this
It's
moment.
the Oneb fam. Yeah.
But you will also see that we're sticklers that Oneb has a hyphen in it. Oh, hyphen.
Does
Neb.
it?
Yes.
Oh, I
Very
will have to
important.
correct a
The
bunch
M
of
needs to be
texts.
capitalized, otherwise people who don't know what's going on and have never heard of us are like, what's Oneb?
Oneb, wow.
Yeah.
It's like BB-8.
BB-8. It's BB
Yeah.
Oneb. Yeah,
the
anyways.
hyphen.
So if you're not familiar already, there's a campaign going on. There's a GameFound campaign currently going on for Vestige, which is this box over here. Vestige is the newest game from Oneb, and I tend to be a fan of Oneb's games. Vindication was my #1 game of all time. We have Orange Nebula. Not Orange Nebula, that's the company. We have Unsettled, which I think is fantastic, and then we have Spiritfire, which from what I've gotten a chance to dive into, I've really enjoyed so far. And then now we have Vestige, which is their newest game, although the first one that's kind of based on a system you already have, which I guess is the first starting off question over here. And I will note, by the way, because we have two people on giving the questions, two people answering, if there's moments where we're looking at around, figuring out who's talking next, just bear with us. But why Vestige? Like, what was the goal? When you're diving into Vestige for the first time, it's based on the Vindication system, although very different in box size, price point, changes to the rules, a whole bunch of things, which we'll get into some of them. Why this?
There were a lot of conversations, I think, that happened at the same time, and one of them was, can we take this big, colossal, monstrous, game, Vindication, that has a lot of modules and a lot of expansions and all these different things, streamline it and maybe kind of evolve it into maybe a more modernized, streamlined, more efficient, well-engineered, approachable game? And would that increase its accessibility in the marketplace? Is it something that we could use to get into retail more, into game stores? And so it kind of evolved from there. Should we do it? Can we do it? If we did it, should we change the theme? Should we change the, what it feels like? And we just kind of took that as a challenge and ran with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, accessibility was definitely the main focus of everything that went into it. Something we've heard over the years as a company is, I'm really interested in your designs. I really like your ethos. It's out of my reach. Because we have historically made crowd-funded games which speak to a certain segment of the community, and that segment is usually more stuff, higher quality, more expensive, etc.
For context, I walked in on Vestige, and my first question was, can we get these tiles in metal?
Exactly.
I was told no.
Yes. You are the opposite of what we're trying to do with it. But so the idea was, how do we take, we have in Vindication, our first game, an award-winning, very well-received game. You said it's your favorite game ever. Yep. Like, we hear that all the time. But it exists in a way that it is not reachable for a huge segment of the board game community. And so what does it look like to make that approachable? And that approachability or accessibility goes beyond just, like, physical size or cost. There are elements of the Vindication design that are sort of intimidating. That's a very modular game with lots of optional elements where you almost build your own game out of all these pieces, and you're like, here's the version of Vindication I want to play. But to a newcomer, you see all that stuff, and even though it is fairly straightforward, if you're not familiar with the system yet, looking at all that in the box is really overwhelming. And so for Vestige, we're trying to take something that takes the heart of what works so well in Vindication and puts it in a package that isn't intimidating on any of these levels.
Which I guess brings the first follow-up question. Are there plans to add expansions, more content, or is this going to be what it's going to be?
Yes, with a giant asterisk. So we want to support the game, and we want to have the game continue and grow and add things to it. But the plan is to do it in such a way that it never gets bloated or grows top-heavy or anything like that. So we will almost certainly not, and with, we reserve the right to do whatever all the time. But the plan right now is to only add, card packs and maybe some tiles and things like that, to where here's new content that freshens the experience, but it doesn't require you to learn any new rules. There's no weird new overhead introduced by any of the expansion content. So that's going to be the goal for growing Vestige moving forward.
So things like Leaders and Chronicles and all these other giant things that are part of Vindication, those
that's
asterisk not included here.
That's sort of part of the ethos of Vindication, but Vestige will probably not have that type of content.
And so Vestige is a spiritual successor to Vindication, but you did decide to retheme it. So would either of you want to talk about like where this theme came from, what inspired you to do it? And
This theme was born in our on the whiteboard with our team. What do we have the opportunity to do? How could we evolve this away from this kind of fantasy genre? Should we do that? What would that look like? And there was a whole big team conversation that we had in the room, and ideas flew, and there was probably some screaming at some point and finger pointing, and then we kind of all decided in a general direction, and then kind of massaged it over time, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, we didn't want to make it's not Vindication's second edition.
Right.
You know, it's also not Vindication Mini because it's not like a small game in that way. It's its own thing. And so from there, it's like, okay, well, Vindication has this theme. We really need to differentiate it. What would be a really different direction that can play with some of the same mechanisms and things like that? And we landed on where this game is.
Yeah, there's a piece of it to me where Vindication kind of has this a little bit altruistic view, where you're wretched and you're kind of regaining your lost honor, and we really developed that over the years with Vindication. This game is a little bit more real, a little bit more scrappy, a little bit more, hey, life is hard sometimes, and you got to really work hard to gain leverage over the situation that you're in and still not give up that part of yourself that is sacred, like hope or something like that. But sometimes the world is and you start to ask questions about, how far you're willing to push yourself in those situations. So we built the world around a little bit of I don't want to say a darker theme, but it's definitely not altruistic in the same way that Vindication, I think, had.
Now, are you done with Vindication?
No. In the same way that Tom, I think, was talking, we want to continue. It's a pretty big, beefy thing now, and it's got a lot of stuff to it, so we're going to be real gentle about adding content to that, probably more packs and things like that where you can diversify your card pool. Like he said, I don't really see us introducing a whole bunch of new rule sets for it because it just kind of becomes really, really expansive. It's pretty expansive now. But it should continue to be fed and live and grow as the audience wants to continue playing it. And so I do see us involving ourselves with the community, especially on Discord, who come up with ideas, and we're like, okay, let's develop that and kind of let people be part of how the direction that it goes.
We have a lot of passion for that game still, and so does the community. And in no way to us is it's like, okay, Vindication's done, we're moving on to Vestige. That is not the case at all. We're going to support both.
Now, one of the things you included in Vestige that is very different from Vindication, in addition to all the tweaks and this and everything else, is this Nemesis player. The idea that you have these AI players that are not just automas, they're their own flavor of something you can add to the game that will operate either against a solo player, competitive play, possibly cooperative play. These new things that, again, each one being their own different flavor or focus, but it opens the door to different ways to play Vestige than you can from Vindication. Why was that? What was the choice to include that here when you've never had that in Vindication? Why the choice to include that here?
Part of what that was born out of was we were trying to figure out, okay, we've put ourselves in this little box of don't introduce a whole lot of new rules. So how can we bend and reshape and twist the existing game system in such a way that it feels fresh, and we can do that consistently with new content, but without saying, here's a bunch of new crap you have to learn. And the Nemesis packs do that to a degree to where there's a sort of rule set for how you introduce Nemesis characters, but then what they do to change the game space, you just read the card and it tells you the character does this, or these regions are now controlled by the NPC character, or everyone's movement is changed in this way. And so these characters are affecting the game state and making a new puzzle for you to navigate, but in a way where you don't have to learn new stuff in order for the game to be feeling different. And that was kind of the genesis there. It also has enabled solo play to be very compelling and not its own weird other solo thing where it's like, oh, you want to play solo? Read this other second rule book that isn't even really the same game. And they're just fun. It's a really fun design sandbox for us to be like, all right, you have 15 cards to make a character that really affects how the game feels. It's just a fun thing to work on.
Yeah, they have their own win conditions, and they have things that they do that are kind of aligned with their personality and what they're trying to do, and you can put multiples in, which I think is really kind of compelling, and it lets you scale the difficulty a little bit too, which I think is, from a solo perspective, I think is very, very strong. We're still actively working on the competitive and the cooperative aspects of it. Want to make sure those are smooth, but the solo play I think is really feeling good right now.
And how many Nemesis are currently planned?
Right now in this campaign, we're releasing 3. If you go walk by Eric's desk, he has, a folder of a dozen of them at any given moment that he's excited about. So we're working on a lot of them, but the goal right now is to release 3 during the campaign.
And going back to my question about new content, are you done with Vindication? Are there goals to include something similar in Vindication?
It's been brought up by the community. We haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about this. Does that make sense to pursue? I think it does.
It's a heck of an undertaking, though, because again, Vindication has 7 years of stuff. So like, does Nemesis work with each of these 30 modules?
Right.
It's a lot bigger of a project than a brand new game.
So then do we need to figure out how to make it work for all of them? Or you can use Nemesis with these expansions, but not these. Like, it's just a much bigger thing to balance.
Yeah, it's a
Cool
bandwidth
idea,
issue for us too.
Really cool idea.
We'll probably approach that at some point. What often happens is somebody in the community is like, hey, I've designed one and I play tested it on my own, and here's kind of what. And then if they kind of get some momentum, we'd love to be a part of those conversations too. I'm not saying that anybody has to do that, but it is something that is intriguing to us, and if the community wants it, it's something that we should shine a light on a little bit. I'm excited about, I love Vindication. It's kind of part of me, and I think if it makes sense, we'll do it, but if it doesn't make sense, we won't. We'll just keep that at Vestige.
Now, is there any goal to do anything similar with something like Unsettled, where you reformat, restructure it, build a new game, more absorbable, cheaper price point, retail presence? Any plans for that?
Unsettled already does that. So the Planet Box system allows us to build a completely new game experience without learning a whole lot of new rules every time you open a new Planet Box. So I feel like we've already kind of accomplished that, and I don't see that changing. I don't know if you feel differently, Tom?
No, I agree that the planets are to Nemesis packs are really good. If what you're asking is, are we going to do a Vindication to Vestige, where we go Unsettled to Project X? No, we're really happy with the state of Unsettled as far as being approachable and something that we can continue to grow and play in as a sandbox without bloating it. Vindication has sort of reached a point where it's like, this is getting out of hand. The box is as big as my house. But Unsettled and Spiritfire were both very specifically designed with those lessons learned, where how can we turn this into an ongoing title without it becoming top heavy? And so you've got the Planet Boxes and the Realm Boxes that really achieve that. So I think both of those designs are doing just what we want them to do, and we're going to continue supporting them. Spiritfire obviously isn't out yet, but the Vindication system is the one that we really felt like, okay, this deserves a second pass and is the best opportunity we have to also at the same time speak to a larger portion of the community.
So outside of the accessibility and size, format factor, all that, what were some of the main design goals when you were tweaking and adjusting this to a new system?
There's a little bit of for me personally, I think everybody approaches that a little bit differently. So I'm going to give my personal view is, how can we take a step away from what is and make this more relevant for a different group of people? So a lot of it had to do with why and a little bit of the backstory, the narrative. There wasn't a whole lot of that with Vindication. With Vestige, there's a lot of backstory and lore, and that'll probably come out in pieces. There's a book, an edition, a hardback edition that we're offering that kind of gets into some of the factions and things that I think aren't even on the campaign right now. But for me, taking yourself out of, Vindication's island, and you wash up shore and you're trying to regain your lost honor. This is a very different world. This is a civilization that fell technology is kind of in shambles, and you're fighting to survive in a world where it's kind of just dog eat dog. And so the design challenge is the melding of mechanics and pleasing turn actions, along with motivations for why I'm doing what I'm doing, and where my focus is. I don't know if that answers your question.
To some extent, I'm thinking more of the mechanical choices though, because there's a lot of small changes you've made throughout the systems, and were there problems or issues you were trying to address with those?
I would say not necessarily problems, but deviations. Okay, so like in Vindication, there's 3 primary locations that you can go to get certain cards. So you go to the Arcane Tower to get relics, you go to the Gaping Maw to fight monsters and things like that. And there was a mechanism with monsters where you had you roll some dice and you have some outcomes. We took those out of this, and we changed the narrative in such a way that you add contacts to your network, and they're out doing jobs for you, and they're out kind of covertly trying to help your network gain leverage. And that feels different because of the way that you're moving across the map and the way that you're kind of trying to not garner too much attention to yourselves. The powers that be kind of try to subvert you. So the first, the leader who passes the trigger point, has something happen, and those types of things. So it really is a little bit of a story that you're telling yourself while you're playing, and so it kind of evolved that way, and the mechanics kind of serve the experience of the player. So if they're not fun, then we kind of don't go that direction.
Yeah, I think for me, a couple different fronts here. For one, we're just more mature designers now than we were 8 years ago, and so I think oftentimes the designs that we appreciate around the office are the most simple ones, and we're like, look how much they did with so little. And so as we're developing this, a lot of what we've been doing is saying, how can we keep something, what we don't want to do is make the dumbed down version of Vindication. That is not what the goal was. We want, and again, it's its own thing, but we wanted to make something that maintains depth but just consistently decrease the amount of mechanical complexity without decreasing that depth. So that was a big design focus for us. And then at the same time, kind of what you're hinting at, this idea of making what is very much a Euro game as immersive as possible. So, you are trying to get these cards, well, all your characters are now doing jobs, and then it's just like little things like that, or like, hey, there's a lot of ways that we could be naming some of these things that after someone plays this 4 or 5 times, they'll notice hey, how come this, all these characters that all are old are all have a similar naming convention. And so people start sort of seeing things like that and picking up these little Easter eggs, and there's just lots of opportunities to kind of layer in sort of environmental storytelling and things like that we haven't been as good at in our older designs, but the more we work on games and the more that we play games and experience things and think about this stuff, the way that we can communicate things without making more work for the players really increases.
Now on the campaign, you've offered free shipping, which I don't think you've ever done before.
No.
Why the choice to, I think it's not just you, I would say free shipping more and more is such an extreme rarity in crowdfunding. I think Chip Theory Games may have done it 2 years ago once. I rarely see it nowadays. Why the choice to do that?
It's almost insane, actually, and we had to really engineer things to work well with offering free shipping over a certain threshold. I think the main reason we decided to do it is because the number one barrier to entry to our products in the crowdfunding space is shipping and taxes. That's just undoubtedly, and we got hurt pretty badly by all the events that surrounded COVID, and have been through, fulfilling enough campaigns now over the past 8 years that we wanted to try to make our product more approachable. Accessible was one thing. I guess accessibility is a better word, but if we can remove some of the real pain points for people, maybe they'll give it a shot. Maybe they'll just find that they like it. Maybe they could be part of our community, and yeah, we're eating a lot of that, but I guess we calculated that cost to try to serve people with what we've built, some value, but also grow our business and try to, do businessy things. So I mean, it was a careful decision that we made, and we think we have it mapped out pretty well. It is a little.
It's a scary thing.
It is a scary
because
thing.
what we didn't want to do is a gimmick. The idea here was we genuinely want to do something to serve the community, to make the game more accessible, and to take away the number one pain point of backing games. And sure, you could increase the price of the game X dollars and then call shipping free, which is what I would assume if I saw free shipping on a campaign. But no, like, we really went into this saying, like, how brutal can we be with how much we eat, and can we make free shipping possible without passing it on to people under a different label. And this game is small enough that we were able to get to where we think we think we're in a safe zone to do it. But if there's a game that we want to try it on, why not the one where the entire goal is to be more accessible?
So if they're talking about, making a smaller game, more accessible, dealing with shipping, taxes, all these other pain points, what does that mean for the future of Oneb's games? Is this the direction you're going in general? Is it going to be sometimes something you're mindful of, but you're still going to have big box experiences?
It's a matching game. So the thing that we don't want to give up is the passion that we have for creating. And we don't ever want to be in a following position where we're giving people what they're asking for. We want to be people who are creating things and inviting people into an experience that we love, and that we are not building for someone else as a chore. We're building this for ourselves because we've learned a lot, and we're applying all of our institutional knowledge into something that's valuable. That's on one side. On the other side, people have to want it enough to buy it for it to be viable. And so you have to make it approachable. You have to consider shipping. You have to consider taxes. You have to consider the way the campaign page reads. You have to consider pretty much everything. And our culture is very demanding, and the expectations are very high. I don't necessarily mind that because it calls the weak ones out, but it puts a lot of pressure on those who are fighting, like us, to keep the lights on, and that's a very real thing.
There's also an extent to which... Sorry, were you done?
No.
There's also an extent to which, for a team like us, we're very small. For a team like us to function, it has to be passion work. Because the reality is, Mark and I spend 40, 50 hours a week running a business, and then 40 hours of our own time designing these games.
Right.
And if we're not into what we're doing enough for it to eat all of our private alone time, we're going to hate our life. And so you're probably going to see some sort of pendulum effect where it's like, we're making a big game and we burn out on that. So now we're switching to small games for a while. And then we're going to get like, hey, what would be fun? So like wherever we're at, we're probably going to then do the other thing. And that probably is just what this company is going to be doing is whatever we feel like making right now, because it requires that fire and that seed of like major enthusiasm or passion, because we won't have the energy to do it otherwise. And it requires this almost irresponsible amount of passion to make this happen.
Yeah, Spiritfire is a big sprawling game that takes a tremendous amount of engineering to get right.
After working on Spiritfire, which we're still in, the idea of making another game of that scale, like, I quit. I can't. No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Not enough left.
But like, hey, should we try something that is a different design experience? Yes, that sounds really fun. I have energy for that.
Yeah. Less complexity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, we'll make a couple other things and be like, what sounds fun? The most ambitious thing of all time.
Right.
And
it's definitely us.
Yeah. So it'll be a moving. It's not as calculated as you might assume. It is just really like, where's our energy?
If not us, who is a question we ask a lot.
Well, speaking of the things that make you guys happy, in Vestige there are chop bots, and I know that there is a huge fan favorite chop bot right now, but it's not mine. There's also a cat one. And my actual question is, what is your favorite piece of Vestige? And, something from it could be a bot or a certain person, or it could be a certain location. It could be even an aesthetic change that was made, but what little thing makes you the happiest that you would be like,
What
this
a
is what
fun
we should
question.
rally behind? There's also a dog bot, so you can have the dog and the cat.
I mean, I do appreciate. I really. And this is a conversation I just had on Discord, so I'm primed for this. I really understand the appeal of cats. I am deathly allergic to them.
Same.
So the idea of a robot cat, okay, that speaks to me.
That's
so
a
I
good
do
cat.
like the Whiskers,
Yes.
Whiskers robot.
Also, they never die. You just port their
Yeah.
consciousness into
Yeah.
the next one.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have some jokes there that I'll probably reserve for myself. But I mean, if I
You
was
do it
to,
9 times, then it expires.
I'm really proud of the world building we're doing on this game. It's very cool. And it's going to be difficult to share that with the world in the way that we want to, instead of just dumping it on everyone, because I'm proud of it. And so the instinct there is to just like write a giant wall of lore for everyone to appreciate it. But I also recognize that's not the most compelling and interesting way to invite people into what we've built. So the like restraint of sharing that with the world is in a way that I know is better is going to be difficult. But I'm really proud of the world building we've done on this. Is super cool. I know you know it's like, oh, cyberpunk dystopia. Okay, that's nothing of what
It's very
this-
surface,
yeah,
yeah.
this is much cooler than that.
I echo that sentiment. And I've had a hard time articulating this in the past, but the design process is the thing for me. It's the thing. And as soon as I'm done with something, I'm on to the next thing. And the end product is a result, hopefully, of a bunch of really good decisions, tough decisions that we've made. But why and the rationale for why all of the decisions were made in the game and how they tie together, does that make sense that would do that? No, of course not. So we can't do that. That battle over a course of time to build a world with characters that people get to actually interact with and have mechanisms to contend with, that process is where it's at for me as a designer. And it's not even playing as much as it is designing. So I mean, that's just kind of where I live. So that's what I'm most proud of, is at the end, it's just like all the invisible things that people will never see are probably the things I'm most proud of.
Here's a random anecdotal bit thing. The art in this game is incredible.
Yes.
It's done by an artist named Ninja Joe, and she's one of my very favorites. She's amazing. And
For the record, I've been hearing Ninja Joe the whole weekend, and until this moment, I just assumed, reasonably, that it was a man.
what? Because Joe?
Joe.
Yeah, she's a woman. Her
Katarina.
name is Katarina.
Yeah.
And one of the things that just, as we're talking, just stood out to me is that most of my favorite pieces of art in the game and my favorite characters in the game are probably in their 70s, which is unusual. I wouldn't say that about most games. And it's not like the game is just full. This is twice now I've referenced old people. Old people. Sorry, old people.
They have a naming convention. They're very
but-
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You got it. But yeah, that's striking me right now that I can't think of any other title where the characters that I'm most interested in are, in their 70s or 80s. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I'm going to end on this question, because you touched upon how crowdfunding can be very hard, it can be very brutal, it can be weeds out some people from it. You have one of the most passionate communities I know about. Like the Oneb fam, the Oneb community, they're immediate to jump to your defense. They have your back. They buy things just based on your reputation alone. It's amazing. At the same time, you're still in crowdfunding, and crowdfunding still has that pressure, that the people who want things a certain way, who expect the reactions, pivoted within 24 hours from everything that they've told you, and they want that. They want that. What is something you wish backers were more either mindful of or knew, or something you can convey to backers to kind of, what's something you wish backers were more mindful of or knew?
Interesting question. I like it. I think people in general, I won't even just limit it to backers. I'm going to change the question.
Everyone.
I wish that I, for example, and people in general would pause and take a breath before they post a comment, especially if it's fueled by any type of emotion. That's the first thing. That's just a cultural observation, and it's true of me too. So I've found that the community that we've built, like on Discord, Facebook, and whatnot, has just this camaraderie, and they just kind of share positivity that's mostly positive, almost entirely positive, and you just don't see that in as many spaces. And I attribute a lot of that to the way it's been shepherded, largely by Tom, by the way. And shepherded is a really good word because we just kind of encourage people to come as they are, and not be overly critical, but give people the benefit of the doubt. And that's kind of what I would wish backers would do is, you know, just like anything else, people are just kind of killing themselves to make something and share it. And there's an opportunity there to make a relationship as well as a transaction. And
which is the spirit of crowdfunding. That's literally the point and spirit of it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of folks out there that feel like they have to defend the people from the company, and our company is 9 people with families, and you know, I don't feel like you have to defend yourselves from us. Like, we're trying to make your day better, and we're trying to also make our day better, and there's some common ground there. So I guess just kind of get, like, be curious and ask questions, and, you know, feel free to come be part of what we're doing would be what I would implore backers to do. And whether they back or not, you know, just people who are just like come across what we're, you know, if it's on our website or in our social spaces or on a crowdfunding platform, find out who we are, find out, you know, what our reputation is, and still ask those hard questions that you want answers to, because you deserve those answers.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I'll drop a link down below to your YouTube channel, because I know you guys do these wormhole events and really loop people in.
Yeah, we are definitely a people first company, and not every second of the day maybe shows that, but we definitely, that's in our DNA. And you know, we all love each other here, we respect each other, and we respect the community, and I'm glad that shows.
Can I throw a little bit of answer towards what we wish people
please.
knew? One of the things that I'm most proud of about our community, and the thing that I think really makes it what it is, and this is what I would hope for the backers, like crowdfunding backers in general, is recognizing and honoring how much everyone involved cares. So, like, the creators that made the thing that you're dissecting, they care a lot. They gave up their weekends, they gave up their holidays, they gave up all their evening hours. Like, this is passion for them. They're pouring themselves into it, and it matters to them, and they want you to love it. They want you to feel served. Like, like, no one's getting, with the exception of like 3 humans, no one in this industry is getting wealthy. You know, like, this is an industry of people who care about what they're doing, and you can almost just take for granted most of the time. I know there are exceptions, and they're all coming to mind right now. But again, it's a small list that I'm able to make a bulleted list of in my head. Like, most of the time in this industry, you can kind of take it for granted that these people running this campaign are well-intentioned and trying really hard. Mm-hmm. At the same time, we can assume the same thing about backers. Yes, the person in the comments section that just said a really rude thing to the creators, that now you feel like you need to go to war with them. Remember, they came there because they want to be excited about this thing. Mm-hmm. They are like you. They think this is cool and they want to be a part of it. And they're expressing it in a way that is questionable and maybe unhealthy, but deep down, their motivations are probably good too. Everyone is here because we care. And if we can keep resetting to that understanding before we respond to anyone, okay, here's a person that cares. I think they're getting something wrong, and I'm going to talk about it, me being, I don't know, random commenter right now. Mm-hmm. But, you know, so the creator's getting something wrong, or they didn't have this video done, or this other backer is being a jerk, or this other backer is enabling the creators, or whatever these things are you think. Jump back to the common underlying foundational truth that this person that you're thinking about cares a lot, and that's why they're here. And I think if that is the frame and the lens through which we engage with each other in these spaces, it'll be much more true to reality instead of this like weird false combat zone that we enter. There you go.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, that's Vestige, which I'll include a link down below. You can check out the campaign. Mark, Tom, and Meg, thank you so much for joining us today.
Mm-hmm. And you can check out the campaign link down below right now. Bye.